All right, we're back here for more Versus Live. That's Ross Merriam. I'm Todd Anderson. We got Rob over in the booth. If you have any questions for us throughout the broadcast, make sure to @ Rob in the SCG Tour chat, and he will ask his favorite ones, or maybe call it his favorite digs. I like the digs. They're pretty good sometimes.
We're well aware of that, Todd.
Yeah. Well, why you say that, Ross? Is it because you get digged a lot? I'm pretty sure it's because I get digged a lot.
I don't know. Whenever Tannen's in, it's always...
Ooh. No, we always dig on Tannen. Yeah, thanks for being here, Tannen. Also, where's your trophy at? So, yeah, we've already got one match in the books. We tried out the new Grixis Arclight Phoenix deck that's been kind of all over the place on Magic Online. I wrote an article about it, as well as a bunch of other builds of Arclight Phoenix, so you can check out on Star City Games right now. And then we actually got defeated by Grixis Control, getting hit from the angles of Graveyard after Sideboard with Surgical Extraction, plus raw number of resources with him to Turok, just taking the cards out of my hand, just one by one. Really slowed me down, made me unable to ever recur a Phoenix a second time. I was able to combo you once. In game 1, I was able to turn 1, discard spell, bring back 3 Phoenix. Very powerful start. Not complaining. I'm just saying. I did get 1-3, and I think that is relatively indicative of how the matchup's supposed to go.
I was worried about that matchup just because I thought the games would go long. You would eventually just resolve a Buried Alive, and from there, it was sort of inevitable that the Phoenixes come back and snowball. But I was able to, pressure you with Gurmag Angler in several spots. I drew a lot of them over the course of the games that we played, and end the game before that became an eventuality. So Gurmag Angler was really key, and I came away, somewhat impressed by the Grixis Control deck, which I guess shouldn't be a surprise because it's been one of the most popular decks in the format for the last few months. But
yeah,
now we get to move on.
Yeah, well, what are you playing in the second video today?
I'm playing my favorite deck in Legacy, which many of you might think is Elves, but is actually Storm. Or Ad Nauseam Tendrils, to be more specific.
Pretty sure it's Storm.
Is that what we call it now?
Yes.
Okay.
We've called it that for roughly 6 years, but okay.
But there's 2 different Storm decks, and they're
both
different.
Storm.
They're just both called Storm?
Yeah.
Okay.
Look, Brian Cook's the only person that plays the other one, okay?
That is true.
So it's their Storm. They both utilize the Storm mechanic alongside a bunch of rituals, as well as play a bunch of card draw spells. They play Lion's Eye Diamond.
Sure. Okay.
Any complaints can be taken up with Nick Miller.
No, Cedric Phillips. All complaints direct at Cedric Phillips at all times.
Even ones not related to Magic or Star City Games.
Yeah.
Any complaint you have, you stub your toe in the morning.
Yeah.
Tweet at
Cedric.
Yeah. You didn't get that raise you were looking for at your job. Tweet at Cedric.
All right, so you lost
at Cedric A. Phillips.
Come on, don't do that. You lost Gitaxian Pro. Okay, how has that affected your deck, and how have you compensated since?
Okay, so there's not a ton to do to compensate. It really makes the deck a little bit more explosive. It also makes the deck harder to play. I think you have to play it more aggressively now and take more risks. Before, when you had Probe, you'd see exactly what you needed to play around, and then you'd be able to sculpt your hand specifically to that. Now you're playing more of a guessing game, and that necessitates sometimes just putting your cards on the table and hoping they don't have the right answers.
Now, how does Cabal Therapy losing Gitaxian Probe make it line up alongside Thoughtseize? Like, do you play Thoughtseize instead? Do you still play Duress, or do you do Thoughtseize Cabal Therapy?
It's Thoughtseize Duress. Without the Probe to enable therapy, it's become significantly worse, which does hurt you in combo matchups because a lot of the time against opposing combo decks, you would try to fire off a quick Empty the Warrens after sideboard and then flash back a therapy or 2 in your graveyard and get some extra discard spells that way and play the small ball sort of aggro control game. That is no longer available to you, and that's an issue. Thoughtseize runs into some problems when you combine it with Ad Nauseam, just losing life. So it's a lot of subtle downgrades. We're playing more Preordains, but overall there's less cantripping power in the deck. You used to play full sets of Probe, Brainstorm, Ponder, and 2 Preordain. Now it's just full sets of the 3 1-mana ones. And there's 1 extra Ritual and Rain of Filth, and 1 extra sort of big spell. A second Past in Flames is usually found. Sometimes that Rain of Filth is an 8th discard spell.
What about, what's the... I forget the name of the 5-mana tutor that gives you 3 mana.
Dark Petition.
Dark Petition. Still the 1 Dark Petition?
Yeah, hard to play too many of that card. It's just a lot of investment early, and it's a 5-drop for Ad Nauseam.
Sure.
The second Past in Flames has some value. If you just draw it, it's pretty easy to use your Infernal Tutors to find that key ritual that you need.
Mm-hmm.
Like you Infernal Tutor, sack the LED, put a Past in Flames in your graveyard, find Cabal ritual. You probably have Threshold and go from there.
Sure.
So Past in Flames is a card you're happy to draw most of the time. So the second copy works pretty well. Although I think I'm going to board it out pretty often because people tend to bring in things like Surgical and other Graveyard Hate. So it gets worse after sideboarding. But in game one, I'm pretty happy to have the second copy.
Okay. So that's what Ross is playing in this matchup. I'm going to be piloting Liz Lynn's Dimir Death Shadow deck. I think this is going to be one of the tougher matchups for Storm, and we want to put it up against something tough just because, I think that Dimir Shadow, as well as just various Delver decks with discard effects now, are particularly problematic for these Storm combo decks for things like Sneak and Show. And it's important to really put a spotlight on why they're not seeing as much play, as well as just how the matchup kind of tends to play out from both sides.
Yeah, the old style Delver decks were pretty laser focused on using counter spells as their primary means of disruption. They have Wasteland too, and sometimes they had Stifle. And you could often play into a longer game to use your life total as a resource and try to win on turn 5 or 6 when you're at 5 life or so, and that way make some more land drops and try to blank the effectiveness of Daze and Spell Pierce, things like that. The Death Shadow deck is a faster clock because Shadow sometimes just kills you in 2 turns. Gurmag Angler is a pretty big clock too. They have discard spells to make that harder, and that's another angle of disruption.
Yeah.
And whenever you've added that last angle, as you talked about with the last matchup, Grixis control over Phoenix, that tends to overload things. So this matchup is definitely a real big headache for Storms. We want to really put it to the test and see how it goes.
So here's the thing that I've noticed ever since Deathrat Shaman was banned. People have kind of been looking for another piece of interaction to slow things down. Deathrite Shaman sped things up because if you played a turn 1 Deathrite Shaman, you're usually able to double spell on turn 2 and really start to push ahead on things like Wasteland and such. But losing the Deathrite Shaman made it much more desirable to play main deck Thoughtseize. And I think that for the most part, a lot of the Grixis Delver decks started leaning towards Thoughtseize, which ultimately for me just made me think, like, why aren't we just playing Death Shadow? If we're going to play Thoughtseize, Death Shadow seems like a no-brainer. If Street Wraith plus Thoughtseize, and then you just play a slightly different mana base, you get one of the most potent threats in Magic's history in Death Shadow. And to me, that just feels like a bit of a no-brainer. And that's why we picked it today instead. We're not playing Grixis Delver, right? We're playing Azorius Delver later on.
Yeah, this is your flavor of Delver.
Yeah. This is my favorite flavor of Delver. I expect this deck to do well this weekend. But let's just go and get to the match, unless we got a couple questions. All right, Rob shook his head no. That means y'all need to ask some questions, man. This is a show built around interaction with Twitch chat, okay?
Also,
we need something.
You don't get a lot of legacy here on Versus Live.
Yeah, support it.
So, all you people that asked us last week, you're going to be playing Legacy the next week in advance of Syracuse, and you got to be here. You got to ask us questions about Legacy when you got the shot.
All right,
as they say, shoot your shot.
All right, I have a tough one. I think this is a mulligan. I'm mulliganing it.
I think it is a mulligan too.
All right, I would have missed, so we're going to throw it back. How's yours?
My hand is quite good.
Okay.
The mana in it is slightly awkward, and that is the only bad thing I could say about it.
Okay.
Other than that, it has basically everything I'm looking for.
All right. So now that you called him out, we got some.
Oh, yeah. Here we go.
It happens every time.
Where are the show and tell and sneak attack decks now in Legacy? We have seen...
Unplayable.
Okay. There we go.
Okay. Unplayable is strong. I just think that all of the Delver decks adopting discard effects lets them hit you at 3 different angles: the mana, the hand, and counter spells. And it makes playing combo decks pretty hard. And specifically, Sneak and Show. Like, when I'm playing a Sneak and Show deck, if I'm playing against a Delver opponent, the ones that I'm terrified of are the ones that have hand disruption as well as the counter spells, because I can, kind of jam a couple times and make my opponent have multiple force wills, but then try to rebuild last second. But if they hit me early and then they don't have to play their force will until the last card, it's just a lot harder to win. It's a lot harder to combo through that.
No, the common adage with discard spells is you take the card that punches a hole in their hand, and in a normal game that may be taking their one threat or taking their only 3-drop to make them waste their mana on their turn, taking their one answer to your card, things like that, and that happens even more easily and more readily against a Sneak and Show deck that is literally trying to assemble 2 pieces and one of each. So you just take the one of the pieces and their hand does nothing.
Yeah.
You know, like against an engine-based combo deck like Storm, you can take their one Infernal Tutor, or you take their best mana producer if they seem a little bit light on mana. There's a lot more redundancy in those decks. I've got 9 big spells. I've got 16 ways to make additional mana and a bunch of cantrips. The Sneak and Show decks, they have 8 copies of each of their things, and that's in game 1. Sometimes they go down even further in games 2 and 3 to make room for other disruption. So the discard spells are particularly potent against that style of combo deck, whereas that style of combo deck was quite good against soft counters out of the old Delver decks, the Dazes and Spell Pierces, because you have all these lands that make 2 mana and all these Lotus Petals, and so you would just get to 5-6 mana pretty quickly and go from there. And so the shift, I think, has really hurt it. The deck hasn't really gotten anything new in 5 years. So while everything else in the format slowly gets better, because that's how Magic works, it's stayed the same. The deck's just not good. This is not.
That's not very nice to say. All right, I'm going to keep my 6 pretty good. We're going to scry here. Fetch land on top. We're going to put it on the bottom. Let's lead with a Street Race. I'm at 18.
Yep.
And I'll go to 16 and say go.
Ooh, that was pretty good. Let's lead on a preordained.
Sure.
And I like that too. So let's keep both.
Okay.
Pass.
Draw. All right. 14.
Yep.
Your turn. Couple of versions of Death Shadow I've seen recently have moved towards main deck Hymn to Torok, and I think that actually is a pretty smart move. The card feels really strong right now, with a lot of decks being these like fair-based blue decks, but also just hammers home your disruption against the combo decks in the format. And it's even, I mean, it's good against basically everything. And with the majority of your lands producing black, I think it's just a no-brainer. I've been pretty happy to play 2. Especially because you don't usually cast Death Shadow on turn 1 or 2, so just casting a Hymn to Torok on 2 and then following that up with like Death Shadow plus Disruption on 3 is pretty sweet.
Pass the turn.
Okay. That was a great draw. Thoughts, EG?
Brainstorm response.
That's fine.
Think I have to now play this a turn behind. So, yeah, let's do that. Otherwise, I just run into a Force of Will, and I'm not under any pressure, so there's no point in going nuts.
So 3 Dark Ritual, LED, and a Cabal. Yeah, this hand is going to be pretty tough to beat, no matter what you're doing. If he has just like a big spell on top. I guess the Lion's Eye Diamond allows him to empty his hand for Tutor, so we'll just take that. And then I'm going to go to 12 from the Thoughtseize and play a Death Shadow and pass the turn.
You have 3 in hand?
Yep.
Yeah, I'll pass.
All right, I'm going to upkeep. I don't really need to thin my deck. I am going to be fetching with Verda here just to do more damage with Death Shadow, but I kind of want a turn to draw Brainstorm and shuffle away this Fatal Push. So we'll go for that, but we miss, so we'll just Thoughtseize down to 10 and punish Ross for...
I mean, I figured you would have just Thoughtseized previously if you had it, so you would have had to draw it off the top.
So your top card is just the nuts?
It's pretty good.
Okay. Yeah, we'll take the duress. I'm gonna go to 10. Then I'll fetch down to 7.
Sure.
And hit you for 6.
I go to 14.
Your turn.
So I'm dead in 2 turns, I have to assume. If Todd just needs to deal a single point of damage to himself. I guess 2 points the following turns. Like, I'm dead to any fetch land or whatever. Actually, maybe not, because you probably only have 3 water graves in the deck.
That's true. But a fetch land, you're at 14, right? So a fetch land lets me go 7/7.
Yeah, but if you don't have something next turn, it's unlikely that I find a way to beat another piece of interaction here. So I think I just go for it.
Sure. Yep. Yeah, you win.
Okay.
I had double days. No, I actually almost dazed the preordain on turn 1. I don't know how good that would have been.
I'm a pretty big fan of aggressively countering cantrips, but when you have no pressure, using a daze is kind of awkward.
Yeah, I had the Death Shadow though, so the Watery Grave bouncing back in my hand actually had some amount of value, which was pretty key. But just you having that much mana and my only, not drawing the hard counter for the daze was pretty.
Yeah, so when I brainstorm, these were the 2 good cards that I wanted to hide. I know I'm just going to wait 2 turns to make sure I can duress. I figured you didn't have another discard spell, so it's more likely you draw into a counter spell than a discard spell, so I should hold the duress. You found the discard spell, which was awkward. Here, Todd's low enough that I can just find Tendrils directly, so if you're thinking, oh, Ross doesn't have red mana to find Past in Flames, that's irrelevant at this point. And in fact, I would be, this is 3, 5, 7, 10, 8. I can get 2 more. I can get
Tendrils, mate.
Yeah,
I'm just dead to Tendrils.
I can get 2 more Infernal Tutors there and go up to 7 Storm and then Tendrils for 16 even.
Right.
And still pay for all the both dazes.
Now, are you still sideboarding Xanath Swarm? Is that a thing that you're doing?
So that's a frequent thing that Storm lists do.
I know it's frequent, but I'm curious if you are specifically.
Because this list has 1.
All right. The
I'm not. I wouldn't bring it into this matchup.
Just because I have discard effects?
Yeah, you can't afford to have a card that only gets punished when your opponent plays the discard spells against you.
Sure. Any questions before we move to break, Rob?
Yeah. Tannen would like to know.
Sure.
What's your opinions on your favorite threat bases in the Shadow decks?
In Legacy?
Yes.
Is there a different one than the one that exists in the...
Yeah, so Ben Freeman has a version with no Delver. It's a lot slower. Has main deck Liliana Last Hope. It has Hymn to Torok main deck, and I'm not the hugest fan of it. I don't think that it still plays Daze, for example, but without Delver secrets. Something like Daze is a lot harder to utilize because not putting your opponent under a lot of pressure just makes it harder makes it less like your opponent is forced to run into it, for example. So I'm not the huge proponent of that version, but I mean it does exist, and he got second, I think, at a recent classic with the deck, so it can't be that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I would be on the side of Delver too, but I haven't seen too much of that. It seems weird to me. I agree to have Daze without the additional 1-drops.
He also didn't have Wasteland, which was also weird to have Daze with no Wasteland, no Delver. Personally, but I mean, Ben's a really smart dude, so I'm gonna give him credit where it's due. He's just going a little more controlling route with Death Shadow. Much like the Grixis Shadow decks and Modern. They tend to lean, or they used to lean a lot more controlling with a lot more Kolaghan's commands and things like that, really slowing the games down and taking advantage of that. And he's just kind of going in that same vein. All right, anything else?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the Niv Magus deck that Brian Gottlieb had written about?
No comment. I own 50 Niv Magus Elemental on Magic Online from Pro Tour Return to Ravnica back in 2012 or whatever, just because it was a deck that Jerry played in Modern with Josh Cho and Brad Nelson and maybe one other person. And I was just hoping that it would be super busted. And it wasn't. I mean, it was, but it was pretty easy to disrupt with just generic creature removal.
And discard spells.
Yeah. and and Jund was like a pretty big deal at the time. So
Yeah, Death Ray Shaman got printed in that set, so.
I know. So I'll say this: you're not gonna get me again.
Fool me once.
I mean, I've literally played a Temur Delver deck in Legacy with 4 Flusterstorm, 4 Niv Magus Elemental in it. So you don't got to tell me about old Niv Magus. That was an open, and I didn't even do well, obviously, but I did an open in Indianapolis like probably 5 years ago or 6 years ago or something. Dedicated to the cause. Try to get Niv Magus off the ground so I could sell my 50 that I had on it.
And to that end, the deck's busted by Niv Magus Elemental.
Oh, it's great. Brian Go is a really smart individual. And I'll say this, he was one of the first proponents of the Gates decks. And, they did pick up a lot in popularity. They haven't really broken through as far as like winning a large tournament is concerned, but they are very powerful, and they were the driving force in Dallas just a few weeks ago before the Mythic Championship. And I think that people are building it incorrectly in that they are putting too much stock in the Wilderness Reclamation Nexus of Fate part of the deck, where they could just play the powerful Gate synergies and just use, utilize Gates Ablaze and Guild Summit. I think if you do that and you just, win with your normal Gates type cards like the Colossus or the Gatebreaker Ram, like, it just seems like a lot smarter to me. I don't know. 4 mana enchantment plus 7 mana instant combined into a deck where neither of them really do much outside of having the other one means you're more susceptible to Spell Pierce and Negate and things like that. Brian Goes smart guy. That was where I'm going with that.
Yeah, Niv Magus. That's a lot of work for a card that
it's just like a one-man Tarmogoyf.
Yeah.
Is it even good? I don't know.
It's a lot of work.
There's a lot of work. All right. Well, we're going to take a short break here while we prepare sideboards. We will be taking some more questions, though, after we get finished sideboarding. So make sure to add CG Tour. Rob's going to pick his favorites. We'll be right back. All right. We're back here for sideboarding for Game 2 of this Storm v. Dimir Death Shadow matchup. I think we talked about it a little more, and I think I definitely should have just dazed the cantrip on turn 1. I think that was basically the focal point of the game. Based on my hand, I just needed to slow Ross down, and the longer the game goes, cards like Daze just get worse and worse. And with 2 copies in my hand and my deck functioning very well off of just 1 or 2 mana, there's no real reason for me not to.
I think the single mistake that people make most often against Storm in particular, but combo decks in general, is to try to hold all of their disruption for the combo turn, and that can allow your mana to get overloaded, and it allows your opponent to just set up their draws and find the necessary answers to whatever disruption that you have.
Right.
Whereas if you're just using your disruption to counter their setup cards, their preordains, their brainstorms, their ponders, eventually they get to the point where they have to run into the forcible that you had, or they just never find a way to kill you, and the game gets pretty easy from there. You have to evaluate what is this card doing to stop other things, but cards like you said, like Daze and Spell Pierce, that get dead as the game goes long, are prime candidates to just trade in the early game for those cantrips and setup spells. So
right.
So yeah, that's definitely something that I would tell everybody watching. Look, if you're playing against a combo deck, look to do that more often.
Yep. As far as how we're going to sideboard in the matchup is concerned, the removal spells can pretty cleanly come out. Sometimes they bring in Xanath Swarm, but I think that the games where they have it, you just have to rely on things like Hymn to Turok, Thoughtseize, and Wasteland, and just hope that that's good enough. Because the Xanath Swarms are pretty few and far between, and if we leave in dead cards, we're just going to draw them instead of the more better disruptive pieces. We're also going to be bringing in the Snapcaster Mage to act as an additional piece of disruption. Reanimate is this weird card in the deck where it functions well with Street Wraith early to provide you another Delver-esque threat if you draw them in tandem. But the strength of Reanimate really comes in matchups where your opponent is playing Fatal Push and things like that to kill my early creatures. And I'm not bringing Surgical Extraction. Do you want to explain why?
I want you to explain why, because I'm confused.
Well, mostly because the only way it's ever going to do anything is if I hit a Lion's Eye Diamond or a Grim, or not Grim Tutor, Infernal Tutor, and then I'm able to pair that with Surgical Extraction. Your deck attacks from a bunch of different angles. Single Surgical is very rarely ever going to beat you by itself, And I think that surgical is way overboarded in this particular type of matchup.
Okay. I could definitely see that. I like it a bit when you have some discard spells, so you can inform how you're surgicaling, and sometimes use it as just an additional discard spell, taking a second copy of a card out of their hand.
I mean,
I also like it particularly against Past in Flames and Cabal Ritual in this matchup.
yeah, okay.
Cabal Ritual is hard to keep off threshold now that Deathrite Shaman is gone, but it can definitely come up.
I'll bring in one and cut the other reanimate just because I'm not a huge fan of the reanimate in general.
I agree. On my side, I'm sideboarding very minimally, as I typically do. In these Delver matchups, I'm bringing in one Empty the Warrens, which is a much better card in the post-board games when your opponent has more disruption for you. It's a card that can help you win small or just buy a ton of time against a Death Shadow, and you make 6-8 goblins. Sometimes 6-8, maybe 10 goblins is plenty because they're going to deal so much damage to themselves. So it's a card that you can definitely just cast once they Hymn to Turok you and you're low on resources for a few goblins and maybe steal a game that way. The second Past in Flames is a luxury that we don't need in the post-board games because it's a liability against surgical extraction.
Right.
There's a lot of other disruptive elements I could bring in this matchup. Abrupt Decay can handle an early threat and buy me time. Flusterstorm can defend my spells from a counter spell or counter a discard spell in the early game. Sylvan Library is quite good against discard spells, but pretty bad when they're wastelanding you, so you have to fetch a non-basic to cast it, and when they're pressuring your life total. So I think this is more for slower matchups. Ground Seal is good specifically against surgical extraction, but again, the green mana leaves you extra vulnerable to wasteland. And then Xanad Swarm, I think, would be fine in a matchup like this, but it just doesn't play well against discard spells, which I'm expecting more of out of the sideboarding. Hymn to Turok is pretty common. So all of these things end up being pretty poor if you draw them in the wrong spots. And because your opponent is going to be trading more aggressively and more capably in the post-board games, having dead cards like this or narrow cards like this is not something you want. So I'm just going to ride with my discard spells and, hope that's good enough.
All right. Any questions, Rob?
Yeah. What would you say are your top 3 legacy decks right now?
Wow, that's a really good question. So here's the thing. Ever since the banning of Jataxian Probe and Deathrite Shaman, we've had very few tournaments since then. If you'd asked me that right after the banning of Deathrite Shaman, I would have just said Sneak and Show. And then after the Pro Tour Magic 25, I would have said Dimir Shadow. That was my pick as the best deck in Legacy for a while, even all the way up until recently. I played it in a Team Legacy tournament a few months back, and I got crushed, so I stopped playing the deck. But I think Storm might be pretty good. I mean, we got 6 decks today, so just pick 3 of the 6 that we picked today, because we didn't pick the ones that we thought were bad.
Yeah, it's hard for me to narrow it down to say these are the exact 3 best. The format just doesn't see enough play where I can reliably look at what's going on and say, this deck definitely beats this, and all these matchups go in a certain way where I'm really confident in my opinions. But I think in general, the Chalice decks are pretty good right now, like Mono-Red Prison and Eldrazi Post.
Yeah, so I know Dylan Han and Ali Warfield are very high up on Eldrazi Post right now.
One of those decks would be in my top 3. One of either Grixis Delver or Shadows, an aggressive Delver deck, would be in my top 3. And then some sort of longer game fair to blue deck, whether you like a Grixis Control or Miracles, or just a Stoneblade deck, something in that vein. So I would have to narrow it down within each category. I would have to do more work investigating the format, but I think one deck from each of those categories is generally going to be your top 3 in the format.
Okay, one more question.
What are your favorite Legacy deck names? That's a Hysteus question. You gotta have some.
Dimir Shadow.
Wow,
I like that one.
Yeah. Personally, I liked Maverick, although I don't really know why I liked it.
Elves. I like that one. I like that name. Storm.
I liked Elves.
Elves.
I don't know. I was never a huge fan of the weirdo Legacy deck naming convention, so I'm kind of with Ross on this one. I got a mulligan another.
There aren't even that many around these days. Like Death and Taxes. Maverick is super fringe.
Yeah.
Nick Fit.
Yeah, but if you ever started calling it Abzan Explorer or something like that, people would lose their mind.
Riot in the streets.
My deck, it is Nick Fit because I need smoke. I don't know, man.
I don't even know why that one's named Nick Fit.
Probably because the person who built it just never got a smoke break between games or whatever, and I don't know.
Sure, because the the deck takes forever to win, but it doesn't take a lot of time to lose.
That's true. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, well, this one is playable. Is your hand bad? That is not a face of a man who should keep that hand, but, we'll see, I guess.
Keep.
All right, top card is Gurmag Angler. We already have a Death Shadow, but that might be okay. Okay, we'll keep it. 18, Thoughtseize 16.
Uh-oh. Thoughtseize reveals loose keep.
Dude, ooh.
It's a really powerful hand. It just doesn't have the mana.
All right, we'll take Thoughtseize.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, no mana generation here and 3 basically big spells. It's pretty bad for Ross. What'd you draw?
I think it might be the worst possible. Pass.
Was it backup Infernal Tutor? All right, we're going to Hymn to Torok. Raw number of cards is actually pretty important in this matchup, though, after sideboard. Hymn to Torok, discard spells in general. And, if we don't have a way to...
Just don't hit my lands, please.
Okay. All right, so 1 through 6 reroll after there's 4, and then 1 through 5 reroll 6. All right. What we hit?
Okay, you hit 2 spells.
Okay. All right. That's actually not great. Your turn. I wanted to know what the worst possible one was. It had to have just been...
Ponder.
Sure. Couldn't have been a mana generator. It had to have been the second Empty the Warrant or something. I don't know if you even have 2 Empty in the main.
Pass turn.
Draw for turn. Play Brainstorm.
Resolves.
1, 2, 3. Come on, deck. All right, go. Really need to hit a fetch land there off of that Brainstorm. It was a bit greedy because I could just cast Delver of Secrets, but I might just die.
Fetch to 19.
I was pretty afraid of just dying without any more interaction. The basic swamp is a bummer. I want all my lands to tap for blue and black, but then sometimes you just lose the Blood Moon. But I think you're just going to lose a Blood Moon most time anyway. So
Preordain.
Sure.
Don't want those.
Pretty sure I was on the play. I missed a land drop. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay.
4 in hand?
I do.
Pass the turn.
Huh. Okay. Sure enough. That's fine. Let's go. Ponder on this one. Alright. Thought these you. I guess we'll take the cheaper one.
Yeah, take the castable one for sure.
All right.
So you're at 14?
Your turn.
Pass. Actually, because of Hymn to Turok, I should probably just play this pedal out.
Yeah. I agree with that. All right. Brainstorm.
Yep.
Come on. I mean, I'm not mad or nothing because Ross's draw is just unplayably bad.
You realize you're close to dying, right?
How? You think you're gonna resolve your spell? I haven't played a threat in 7 turns. Or
Okay.
whatever. I'm also just gonna Thoughtseize it this turn, so I'm just gonna get that out the way.
It's 3 Thoughtseize.
I mean, my hand is 2 days of Force of Will and a Thoughtseize, man.
Sure.
I haven't played a creature yet. I'm trying to figure out a way to play a creature here. All right, so we gotta put 2 back. I think we just put back.
Can you just play the Gurmag Angler this turn?
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
No, I'm just gonna Thoughtseize you. Because maybe. I don't know, man. There's no reason. I mean, I just want to make your brainstorms bad and stuff, right?
I mean, this is a card I want, but it's not a card that can possibly resolve next turn. So you might
unless,
you might as well just pressure me, get the angler down, next turn go Thoughtseize plus Death plus Shadow.
Sure. Okay. Your turn. I'm just gonna die.
Cabal Ritual.
Sure.
Dark Petition.
Not maintain priority.
I don't have to.
For the Lion's Eyes?
Mm.
I mean, you don't have to, but like...
I don't need the mana. If this resolves, it'll make 3 black, and then I'll be able to cast my Past in Flames. I literally just don't need to pop Lion's Eye Diamond.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. Okay. Yeah, just... Force will pitch of days.
You go to 13.
Yeah, Chad, why didn't you do anything?
Pass the turn.
And now my Thoughtseize is dead. See, he just tricked me. He just tricked me. This is complete garbage. And I mean, Thoughtseize doesn't do anything. I hate you so much.
Yeah, just Thoughtseize me and play a 2/2, and I'm dead in 2 turns.
Whatever. I'm just gonna die to your Past in Flames.
14.
Tricked me. Like seriously, I'm mad right now. Your turn.
So you're at 11.
Yeah, no, I'm not doing this. You lost this game. You cheated me.
What? That's how you play Storm. You got to trick your opponent.
Yeah, just walking the dog to the wrong play every turn. No, that doesn't count. You lost that game because I was going to take your stupid thing, and then
then I have more time.
I have force. Yeah, you have one extra turn, but I still have a force of will.
No, I have multiple extra turns. So you would force this, and
I'm not gonna force. Oh yeah, I would force that. Maybe.
Yeah.
Whatever, dude.
And then I would draw a Cabal Ritual, and maybe I'd have another turn to kill you.
I'm just gonna call cheaty shenanigans. I won that game. You're scum. Because if I just Thoughtseize you, next turn I get to go Gurmag Shadow, and then you're dead.
If you Thoughtseize me, then I pass the turn. You play Gurmag Shadow. I go for it.
I force will, and then I attack you for 8. Play Delver of Secrets, and then you draw Cabal Ritual, and then you die.
I'd be at 11, and you'd have 9 power. Were you going to flip the Delver immediately?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
I brainstormed.
But you're now 2 turns after that. Your brainstorm's cleared.
Okay, well, instead of the Death Shadow, I play Delver, and then it flips, guaranteed, and then I play Death Shadow after, and then you're dead. Look, I can sequence it any way I want to post-mortem, okay? You tricked me. You're a cheat. Strong words from a weak man, I know. Shut up, Twitch chat.
A lot of salty notes right now.
Look, all I know is
I'm just
Ross...
not going to put that game on the scoreboard, by the way.
Oh,
really?
All I know is that when you're playing Storm, sometimes you got to trick your opponent. It's a lot easier.
It's a little different when I have to talk all my plays out for the audience. That's not...
Still magic.
Okay. You know, just let me do my thing, okay? How about you just shut up when it's my turn? Is that okay?
No.
Huh?
I'm part of this show too, Todd.
Not for long.
Nobody puts a baby in a corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. I'm going to be on the play. That game is scrubbed from the record. How about that? Is that acceptable?
Sure.
You cheat.
Fan interference.
2-0 asterisk.
Fan interference? Okay. Huh?
Said 2-0 asterisk.
No, it is 1-0. Because I should have won that game, and Ross cheated me. All right. I'm ready to go. You?
Yeah.
18, Delver, go. The ideal start.
I will go to 19 for an Underground Sea and play Preordain.
I'm gonna cycle through rates anyway, and if I hit a daze here, I might want to daze. So we'll go to 16.
Yep.
14. 12. Okay. Preordain results.
I might not have time to use this, especially if I get Wastelanded next turn, so I'm going to bottom that, but I'll take the top one, and I will play Alliance of Diamond.
you draw a card from your preordained?
Yeah.
Okay. You just put it in your hand, you can put it back
Yeah.
on top. Okay. Yeah, Lion's Eye, resolves, Thoughtseize, Transform. We'll draw it. Now with the Lion's Eye Diamond, I guess I'm gonna be Thoughtseizing no matter what. So let's Thoughtseize and see what Ross has. Then we're gonna figure things out. So if we just take Lion or Infernal Tutor, I believe that shuts off most of his hand.
You're at 10.
Yep, and then I'll fetch to 7 and play a Death Shadow and attack for 3.
I'm at 17.
Should put you at 16, right?
Yeah,
You fetched
you
one.
16, yeah, fetched. Good call.
Okay, your turn. Oh, you got Moto bugged?
I mean, I'm pretty happy to have it if you didn't have a Wasteland, so...
That resolves. You bottomed a Brainstorm?
If you just wasted me, I like wouldn't have time to use it or mana to use it.
It's fair.
This is going to be a tough one.
I'm at 7. So if Ross just like finds, he has Dark Ritual already. So if he actually just finds Infernal Tutor, he can go Dark Ritual, Infernal, crack LED, go get Tendrils, and hit me for 8, and I die. Which is kind of interesting.
Fetch to 15.
If I have nothing, that is. Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're at 15.
Yep.
Okay.
No, preordained.
Sure.
Gonna bottom both of those. Might need more mana here. Pass the turn.
Okay. Draw for turn. Let's go Thoughtseize.
God. There's multiple discard spells every game.
Oh, it gets worse.
Are you hemming me after that?
No.
Or maybe, are you just killing me this turn because you have fetch land 4th Wraith?
5. How big is Death Shadow? 8? So 11?
You need to get to 1 life.
No. I can't kill you.
Okay.
I'll just take Dark Ritual.
That's what I thought.
Okay.
You're at
Wasteland
5.
you.
Yep.
Attack for this many.
So that's 11. I go to 4.
Go.
Just need to find more mana, and I gave myself, I think, the most chances to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I kept the 1 discard spell, then drew off the random one off the preordain after bidding both. It was another discard spell, which I didn't want. I shuffled a land away. Don't think I can win. Oh, ponder.
Sure.
That got oddly close. I doubt it because Todd probably has something else, but yeah, I'm dead.
That's Stifle.
Sure.
For the Tendrils. I mean, I was in a spot where I needed to force Ross to not have extra mana to cast his Duress or Thoughtseize. And the Stifle is... Everyone always tries to dream big with it to counter the Tendrils of Agony when you should dream small with it and just counter lands. Just hit the fetches. Alright, so it's 1-1 with a scrubbed game. We are running pretty short on time, though. Let's play a quick one. No talkie. Play quickly. You're on the play. And I might die on turn 1, so whatever. But we have to have a result. No more draws.
Got to get those marbles.
Yeah. It's been forever, man. I give up. I think they give Ross superpowers. Because for a long time, he did not win very many of our versus lives. And then somehow the marbles came, and now, his mom's strength is behind him.
This is like Harry Potter, where he's like protected by his mother's love.
All right. Okay. Cool. Cool. How's your hand? Mine's pretty good.
Pass.
Thoughts you
Brainstorm in response.
Sure. Maybe I should have cycled street. If I had a days there, that would have been pretty sweet. I guess I don't cycle street race enough. Come on, buddy. Quick game. So it's just all mana except the duress. So next turn you go Dark Writ, Cabal Writ, Rain of Filth, whatever's. Huh. I think I just want the duress. I think next turn he's not going to do anything. He's just going to go duress me. And then I'm going to surgical your brainstorms. Going to 13. Just to shuffle the top 2 cards because I was curious what they were. Ooh, I thought he's an Infernal Tutor. Okay. What? What are you mad about?
Just always have it.
Always have what? I wasn't dead next turn. Alright. Oh, no. I'm shuffling first, sir.
That's not how this card works.
I know. Alright, I'm at 13. Your go. He's just wasteland proof. You have the swamp too, right? Am I crazy?
Oh, yeah.
Legacy, man. Europe, heck of a format. Fetch to 10. Or no, I'm gonna fetch to 12 and him you. So I'm just gonna get a regular old underground sea. 1 through 5. 1 through 4, reroll 5, 6. 1. What'd I get?
Rain of Filth, Cabal Ritual.
All right, your turn.
Best turn.
Draw.
So you're at 12 right now?
Yeah. A brainstorm.
Sure.
Kind of a weird thing to do, but all right, your turn.
Ponder.
Sure.
Dark Ritual.
Sure.
Cabal Ritual.
Sure. You have
4
3
black.
4 black. Okay.
1 floating, 8 goblins.
Well, that's probably good enough.
I'm at 19. Black and pool.
I'm thinking. Just never being able to wasteland was pretty annoying. think I might actually survive this game. All right, you win. I mean, yeah, I might be able to survive, but I doubt it. I could have surgical Cabal Ritual at some point with a Snapcaster.
See if you can survive. Game's only going to last a couple turns.
Sorry, I'm at 12. Okay, I know the top 2 cards in my deck. I'm Brainstorm locked, and I have 2 Street Race that put me to 8.
Yeah, that's not good. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So you're dead? What was your hand?
Snapcaster made 2 Street Race. The top 2 were Stubborn Denial and Daze, which didn't really do anything against your all mana draw. I could have maybe, I don't know, like cycled both on the second Cabal Ritual, but I kind of wanted you to have Infernal Tutor and then Past in Flames, and then in response to Past in Flames, I was going to take away the Infernal Tutor, was my plan. It just didn't work out, so. Oh well, I win. You win. It's fine. Quick game.
So we saw the discard was very good there and really tore my hand apart, and that's where Empty the Warrens is really important. I'm able to win that game with a storm count of 4 as opposed to needing to get to 6 for Tendrils.
I think I just need to be more aggressive with my Street Race, but in that spot I just didn't want to get hit with a duress. But the cards I'm protecting weren't even very good, but digging 2 cards deeper with my Brainstorm would have potentially helped find me a fetch land and let me shuffle away some dead wastelands, which would have been important. I actually would have found Death Shadow in a fetch land if I had cycled both, and that would have given me the ability to Stubborn Denial one of the first few rituals. I don't know if it would have been enough to get me there, but I could have maybe got
if you counter either ritual that turn, I cannot cast Empty the Warrens.
Sure. Anywho, no, you had 1 mana floating and cast Empty. And you had 1 land up.
I had 2 mana left over each ritual. If you counter a ritual, I'm -3.
No, the Cabal rituals were only for +1 mana, right?
But I have to invest the mana to cast them. So the net doesn't matter. It's only the effect that you get rid of. The effect is always +3. Well,
sure.
Unless it's threshold, then it's +5.
Okay. Well, we are we're kind of right on time, but let's take one or two quick questions, and we'll keep our answers a bit short here while we set up for the last match.
Sure. Kind of setting up the next match. How do you feel that Stoneforge Mystic is positioned in the meta right now?
Better than it has been in quite a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I've been a pretty huge proponent of Stoneforge Mystic over the years. You get a lot of free wins with just Stoneforge into Batterskull against kind of like these fair mid-rangey blue decks. And even if they killed the Stoneforge Mystic, you get an extra card to shuffle away with Brainstorm. And so it's one way to gain like raw card advantage in the fair blue matchups. The way that the Death Shadow deck works, though, Source of Plowshare is going to be like a better card in a lot of these fair blue matchups than it has been in the past. And I think that the draw for the deck is actually Swords of Plowshares as your primary removal spell and not necessarily Stoneforge Mystic.
I mean, they're both good, but I agree. Swords of Plowshares is very well positioned in the format, and it's typically been a liability out of Delver decks because you're really trying to pressure their life total, but it's very good against Death Shadow, and it's pretty nice having a card that can just deal with anything. Mm-hmm. And you deal with a Tarmogoyf, you can deal with a Gurmag Angler, and then if the game goes long, you have Stoneforge Mystic to go over the top of, or True Name Nemesis too. So it's really, we saw Jeskai Delver decks do well maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Owen Turtenwald won Grand Prix Washington DC with them, with that deck, and that deck is really a Stoneblade deck, but it just has Delver Secrets in order to pressure combo decks. So it always gets labeled a Delver deck, but it plays out more like a mid-rangey Stoneblade deck. Yeah. It's just a little bit faster, a little bit more aggressively slanted, but it's still really a mid-range deck.
Well, the cool thing about Delver Secrets in this deck too is that if you go like fetch and then play a Delver Secrets on 1, your opponent is highly incentivized to kill it like as quickly as possible because it represents a lot of damage, a lot of pressure, and that is kind of a lightning rod that actually ends up ultimately protecting Stoneforge Mystic, which is a pretty huge deal. And a lot in the same way as Deathrite Shaman in the old like 3-4 colored Esper Deathblade good stuff decks was the same way. So yeah. All right, next question.
How do you feel Elves is positioned right now?
It's all you, baby.
It's a weird time for Elves because in a macro sense, the metagame looks great for it. There's not a lot of combo around. There is less Delver around than there historically has been, and it's a lot of fair blue decks Granted, Terminus is a problem, but without countertop, it's easier to. One of the issues with Miracles back in the day with Elves was that in order to play her on countertop, you wanted to flood the battlefield, and in order to play her on Terminus, you wanted to hold the back. And so it was hard to play her on both. They sort of squeezed you between the two. Now, without top, counterbalance is a lot less of an issue, so you can more readily play around Terminus. My issue with Elves is that like Sneak and Show, it just hasn't really gotten new tools. There's a couple weird
tools. Losing Deathrite Shaman is a huge blow.
It is.
You won a lot of games just like untapping Deathrite Shaman and 2ing them to close out games where they would hit you with discard, Force Will on your Glimpse of Nature, Force Will on your Natural Order.
Yep, and that was sort of your aggressive game plan. You didn't do a ton of attacking because people would usually have a blocker back and stop that. But your aggressive game plan was activate Deathrite, return my Bayou with Korean Ranger, untap it, replay, activate Deathrite. Yep. You could buy time, but you with the gain life ability against Elver decks too to keep drawing through your deck and attacking in there to win a race. So it did lose tools. There's a couple weird like natural order targets people are trying out that are they're whatever.
So I want to bring up one version real quick that I saw. What's the new elf, the 4-mana one that acts like a Glimpse of Nature?
Beastmaster, something Beastmaster.
Yeah, it is an elf. It can be found via Green Sun Zenith, and I've seen versions on Magic Online actually play that instead of Natural Order as a just like 4 of. And I know that I talked to you a little bit about it like a couple weeks back, and I just wanted to see has your idea of it changed at all, or do you still think it's just like not very good?
Natural Order being a card that you can use to win on a low base of resources, just like we saw with Empty the Warrens out of Storm, is an important angle for the deck to have. I think it's also a card that, like, against a combo deck, you can just race out of Urkthar or something like that. Or there's a new Celestia thing that people are trying that stops them from casting spells. So there's some other utility that Natural Order gives the deck that I think is important. So I wouldn't really want to replace it with a card like Beastmaster and just be all in on that kind of game plan and be really vulnerable to things like Aegis-Worn Canonist and effects of that nature. But I also think these fair blue decks, which used to be among Elves' best matchups. Like, I loved playing against Esper Stoneblade, Shardless Sultai, decks that you would think like, oh, they're piles of removal spells and counters and discard but they just didn't have enough of a clock to really pressure you. Those matchups were my bread and butter playing Elves. You just grind through them. You would find so many copies of Elvish Visionary and Wirewood Symbiote over the course of a game because of Greens and Zenith, and you would use your Glimpse of Natures to just draw a couple cards and get ahead. And those matchups were pretty easy. And they've gotten a lot worse. So, like, Hymn to Turok is a really big deal. Liliana Last Hope is a new tool that's really good against Elves. Yeah. They've got Toxic Deluge and other sweepers and things. Everybody's got, like, Fatal Push.
I mean, even True Name Nemesis can kind of clock through your Elves, whereas before, like, you could potentially just block a Batterskull forever.
Yeah, Batterskull and Tarmogoyf would just get bounced off of all the time. Even if they dealt with your symbiote, you'd have Korean Ranger, Dryad Arbor, do that every turn. So I think the deck has just gotten worse overall, as it hasn't really improved over 4 or 5 years, and every other deck has. So I'm not a big fan of it, but in a macro sense, the metagame is well situated for it. Low combo, high amounts of fair, grindy attrition decks. That's what Elves wants to play against. So it's probably fine, but it's not what it was. When I was playing it in 2014, I thought it was the best deck in Legacy.
Sure.
I might not have been right.
Fine. All right. Well, we're going to take a short break here while we prepare for our third and final match of the day. We're going to have Golgari Depths. This is a deck that's been around for a little while now, kind of fighting for supremacy as far as the Despian Sage of Dark Depths decks are concerned. Another Dark Confidant deck, which I like. And then we're going to be facing that off against Azorius Delver, which we were talking about. Don't go anywhere, though. We'll be right back for more Versus Live.